Hey everyone, welcome back to IBSpectrum. Today we will be going over Physics Paper 1 format. This will be applicable for both HL as well as SL students. In today's video, we will be going over what the Paper 1 is, how it's different for HL as well as SL, a few types of questions, as well as a few tips and tricks on how you guys can do so much better. So before I go into Paper 1 in depth, I would like to give a brief introduction. So paper 1 is basically the multiple choice paper where you will be given 4 multiple choices as well as a question, obviously, and you will have to choose the correct option according to you. So each question holds 1 mark weightage, and there are either 30 or 40 questions depending on your opted level. There is no negative marking, which is a plus point, so you can guess in case you aren't sure, but please be sure to make an educated guess. One key thing which you have to keep in mind is that calculators are not allowed in this section. However, a data booklet will be provided. So please try to keep this in mind when you're attempting past papers, just so you can get a better understanding and better practice with such questions. So moving on to the difference between HL and SL. So both HL and SL students have to attempt paper 1. The number of questions vary for SL and HL. So for SL students, it will be 30 questions, whereas for HL students, it will be 40 questions. And as mentioned previously, each question holds 1 mark. Hence, the paper for SL students will be 30 marks, whereas for HL students, it will be 40 marks. The duration of the test for HL students will be 60 minutes, and for SL students, it will be 45 minutes. So for both HL and SL students, it will be a 20% weightage on their final score. The syllabus also slightly varies, but for SL students, it will be the core topics, which are basically the SL portions, whereas for HL students, it will be the core topics as well as additional HL topics. So that's SL and HL portions. So those are the key differences between both of them. Again, not too much and not too much to worry about. So it actually gets so much simpler as you go on. So now we're going to be looking more into the types of questions asked by the IB in paper 1 for physics. So the main types of questions are unit-based questions, the role of certain experiments, the definition of terms, as well as diagram-based questions. So let's go a little further into this and try to sort of understand what is expected from each type of question. So first, we're going to be talking about the unit-based questions. So these questions usually ask you to determine which unit is equivalent to the one stated in the question, or you have to derive a unit, again, based on what is given in the question. So one example of such a question from a past paper is, what unit is equivalent to the joule? So here we had to sort of figure out the SI units, and using the formula, we had to apply the formula basically and try to come up with the SI unit which is equivalent to the joule. The next type of question is the role, yes, again, this is a question type, so it sort of focuses on the role of an experiment. So you ideally have to select what the experiment provides evidence for. So I'll just give an example to sort of better explain this. So an example would be the Geiger Maston experiment provides evidence for ... and again 4 options are provided. So you have to see which is the most applicable, and based on that you have to answer the question. So again, in this case, it's best to keep in mind what experiment sort of proves what in what context, and that helps better sort of answer these questions or choose the correct answer choice. The third type of question is define terms. So again, while there aren't a lot of questions which ask you to explicitly define a term, there are a few questions which might be a little tricky in the sense that they change a few words in the definition. So it's important that you are completely clear and thorough with the concept which you are studying. So an example from, again, another past paper is, what is potential difference, or define the term potential difference. This, again, may appear to be very simple. However, a few words might be changed, which could confuse the student. So please keep in mind and ensure that you are completely clear with each and every concept you are studying. And the last question type, is diagram based. So you will be provided a diagram given in the question, obviously, and you have to answer the question provided below. So as you can see here an example, so you are provided a proper diagram and you have to sort of figure out what the frictional force between the object and the plane is using the diagram and using your past knowledge. So these questions are very, very common. These are, I think, a few of the most common types of questions given in paper 1. So please be sure that you are completely thorough with how to answer questions when they're supported with diagrams. This is very, very essential. So as seen on the bottom right corner, it is very important to note that every question assesses either of the objectives. I apologize for the typo. And you have to try to connect the types of questions to the objectives to get a better understanding of how the IB asks questions and how you are expected to answer them. So now let's move on to a few tips and tricks. Again, this is really, really important, and I really want you guys to focus in this part as this will help you gain the maximum marks. So the first tip is answer the questions you know first. I know this goes without saying, but oftentimes when we're in the stress of exams, we try to go in like sequential order, which is not very beneficial for anyone as we're wasting a lot of time. So since each question is worth 1 mark, try to get as many marks as you can by answering the questions you know first, then focusing on the questions you aren't really sure of. The next tip is, since you don't really have to show working, try not to do too many steps. So a lot of people I know who take physics are very good at math. But one thing to keep in mind is if you're good at mental math, try to avoid writing your steps. Because the more steps you write, the more time it will take for you to answer the question. So if you feel like a certain calculation is very simple, try to answer it like by yourself first, and then later on when you're reviewing your answers you can try to do the working down to cross check your answer. Again, this saves a lot of time in the exam. The third tip I have is, while you're studying, practice MCQs without calculators to get a better basically better practice and better accuracy without calculators. Again, this goes without saying, but a lot of people tend to forget this, so please try to keep practicing without a calculator, especially MCQs. The fourth tip is, don't waste time memorizing values since you get them in your data booklets. Again, this tip sounds kind of ridiculous because like why wouldn't you try to memorize a particular value? But then in the exam, when you're under that stress, there are often times where you get confused with values. For example, you might think 10 to the power 13 is 10 to the power 16. So things like this can happen often. Hence, I would personally recommend you know where your values are and you keep referring to that while you're attempting the exam rather than trying to memorize values which you might get confused on. The fifth tip again sort of goes with the fourth tip. So know exactly where each value and each formula is provided in the data booklet. This will help you save a lot of time as you're able to like navigate through the data booklet easily and only memorize the formulae which are not provided in the booklet. So again, this helps save time, save a lot of memory, and you're basically able to answer every question very thoroughly. And one of the last tips I have is mark each question carefully. So again, while we're writing our exams, we're under a lot of pressure and we may tend to mark a question incorrectly accidentally. So try to keep going over and cross-checking your answers to ensure that you've marked each question correctly. And the last tip, again, it goes without saying since it is a multiple choice like paper. Try If you're not able to get the answer to a question, try to guess. Again, you have to make a very educated guess. Try to use process of elimination to eliminate the wrong answers. And if you're left with 2 which you're unsure of, just go with whichever one you think is correct. So if you're not able to get an answer, don't worry. Just eliminate all of the wrong ones and you'll still have like half a chance or 1/3 or 1/4 of a chance of getting it right. So don't stress. Just try to get as many marks as you can. And lastly, you have done it. So now what we expect for you guys to do is try to attempt a sample of paper 1 and send us your like answers or send us your grades and we will help you figure out where you can improve or give you better feedback. Again, please don't worry about paper 1. It is very simple once you're able to understand how you can tackle the questions. It is not cakewalk. It will not happen overnight, but eventually you will do amazing, and I wish you the best of luck. Please like, share, and subscribe for more tips. Thank you.